Good evening. I'd like to call the regular meeting for the Board of Finance for Monday, April 18th, 2022 to order. Not on the agenda, but I will just add it's very good to see everybody in person in our old home, the community center. It's been quite a while, so it's good to be back, finally. I know that actually Michael's taping. We've got people on the screen that's joining by Zoom. So with that, we will continue on with our agenda for public forum. Item number 1. Anybody wishing to address the Board of Finance in public forum? Okay, hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to item number 2, approve minutes of our regular meeting minutes of March 21st, 2022. Do our motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion, corrections? I had one small item on page 2. Basically, the second paragraph down, third line down, where it says management, be looked at by management, and they have to inventory to see if they need just one extra need in there. That was all I saw. Anybody else? All good? Okay. I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstention, opposed, abstentions. Okay. Item number 3, correspondence, standing building committee minutes. Standing building from April, these are from the minutes of April 5th. I do see Chairman David DeMeo on with us this evening. David, thank you for joining us as always.
My pleasure.
Anybody have anything specifically for standing building committee for Mr. DeMeo? I did have one small item. Let me see what page it is. Looks like page number 3 under item 12. There was a lot of discussion actually under the project commissioning for Melissa Jones and Baldwin Middle School. In looking at that in the second paragraph, I guess I was just curious as to the balancing report. I don't know how long ago it was done, David, but it said the original report was lost by the contractor. I'm just curious, how long ago had that been done? Was that just a couple of weeks, or was that something that had been done way in advance?
I don't have a timeline on it, but I think it's been several months.
Okay.
We've had several balancing reports done because we're trying to get the problem with the airflow resolved. So we really wanted to peel back the original report against the 2 or 3 other reports that we have.
Okay.
But that's being redone at the contractor's expense, as you may expect.
Okay. Right. I was just curious. I was hoping they didn't lose something that was like 2 weeks earlier. But okay, if that was a few months, then I guess I could understand that. Anybody else have anything for building committee? I didn't really have anything else. It's pretty straightforward. It seems like a lot of projects, David, are seeming to wind up. And then another group of projects are getting ready for the summer. Would that be the case? Seemed like there was quite a few anyway.
Sure, yeah, there's several projects. The elevator project is now complete up at Melissa Jones. We're closing in on the final closeout packages for the HVAC project that was done on Melissa Jones. The phase 2 of Baldwin Middle School is closing out, although phase 1, which item 12 addresses, has still got some open items. The turf field is complete, and things of that nature. So we are gearing up for summer work at Cox and Lakes, and possible kitchen project at the Baldwin Middle School as well. So yes, we're in a little bit of a transition, but gearing up for a busy summer.
Great. Thank you. Okay. That's it for me. Anything else? Mr. DeMayo, thank you very much, as always, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, folks, have a good evening.
All right,
Thank
you
Thank
too,
you.
thanks. Moving on, item number 2 under correspondence, pension committee minutes. We have the pension committee and the investment report. Anybody have anything on pension? Either the investment report or the committee committee meeting minutes.
You know, I was just going to ask if there's a little bit of a definition about the DWSR Real Asset Fund, excuse me, that we transferred some of the assets to in this last meeting. It looked like 3% of the transfer came out of the fixed income and 1% came out of the global equity. And I just am not familiar at all with the DWS Reef
This is more, it's commercial real estate.
commercial real estate.
So they, you know, it's an acknowledgement that interest rates are not going to be terribly kind to fixed income as opposed to floating rate credit markets. And they felt that the best way forward is to make a small adjustment out of one asset class and toward another.
I personally like the move. You know,
Yeah.
I don't have a crystal ball, but with interest rates going up,
Exactly.
taking a little out of fixed income may not be a bad idea.
Exactly.
Just wanted to know where it was going. So
Yeah.
commercial real estate.
It's REITs, commercial real estate. As we all know, it seems all to be in recovery at the moment. And of course, they're able to get involved in more flexible pricing, the way that they acknowledge and make their income. So we have plenty in fixed income. And of course, there was a discussion about where do we think interest rates will be in 2 or 3 years and how much we should do about it. This is the first step.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else on pension? Before we move on to the OPEB minutes and report. Okay. Anything on the OPEB board minutes or monthly report?
I was
I
just
can't say
curious
I
about
have
one
anything. Go
thing
ahead,
on the OPEP report too. It looked like there's no deductions. So we won't see monthly or deductions? Are we going to see quarterly or?
We're not going to see deductions from that for several years. The plan, as you might recall, was to start to build the OPEB up, the trust fund up to a point where we could actually start drawing against it and thereby reducing the obligations in our operating budgets to cover the cost for the retirees' medical costs. So you're probably maybe one more 4-year cycle away from seeing that happen.
Okay, just to rephrase, I understand, we're in a build-up phase, so we're still paying the OPEB obligations from the operating budget.
Right.
Okay.
So if your question is, are we paying double? The answer is yes. We are building the OPEB trust purposely so that the next couple of generations won't have to pay as you go. So we will be continuing to pay as we go until such time as we can start drawing down on that safely.
Yep.
Which our advisors will tell us at the appropriate point.
Yep, that was my expectation. I was kind of concerned about how fast we would try to do that and the burden on the taxpayer. But it just was a little bit odd that there wasn't any administrative fees or anything, or management fees. This cycle only, though. I mean, I haven't been watching it every cycle.
They're quarterly. So.
They're quarterly. Okay. All right.
Thank
No
you.
fees sounds good.
Thank you. All right, if nothing further, we'll move on. Item number 4, review and accept a report of expenditures for the Board of Education for, I did notice that it said February of 2022. I know that's a typo, it would be March 2022. With that being said, I'll hand the floor over to Linda Trudeau, and would I make the assumption that if Dr. Balistraci is here, she would be giving the report as well?
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay.
Jennifer, my colleague Jennifer Baldwin, who reviewed the financials, was unable to be here tonight, so I am pinch hitting for her.
Okay.
So the Board of Education reviewed the financials and the warrants at our April 11th first our Operations Committee meeting, and then at our overall Board of Ed meeting on the same evening. Expenditures for the month of March were $4,751,057.61. The expenditures and encumbrances through the end of March were 70.09% of the budget, as compared to 68.7% in the 2020-2021 year, and 69.29% in the 2019-2020 year. In terms of kind of buckets of expenditures, salaries were slightly higher and employee benefits were slightly lower proportionally to the prior year, but I'm going to note by a percent or two, so basically steady. Purchase services were higher than the prior year, and we are expecting to be over budget on the legal services line this year, so we're watching that closely. Tuition, the percent of the budget expended on tuition in March is higher than the prior year, but lower than the 2019-20 year, and I will note that at this time we are projected to be under budget on that line by June 30th. Supplies and materials and capital are higher proportionally than last year, but again lower than the prior year. And I just remind the Board of Finance and our viewing audience that we are spending this year, or reviewing as we review financials this year. We're looking at last year and the year prior to that, because COVID had such an unusual impact on our financials last year. Finally, transportation, the percent of the budget expended is a little bit higher than the past 2 years. And then the warrant, we are submitting the total of all payments equaling $2,142,452.11. So that is a summary of the Board of Ed financials for March 2022. Mrs. Trudeau and I are certainly happy to answer any questions.
Board of Finance, questions?
Just maybe a couple more lines on purchase services that seem to be running pretty high.
Yeah, I think you and I might have the same questions.
Yeah.
There were a couple of items in purchase services. Go ahead.
Hopefully not confusing the columns, which I got to get used to our new 3-column layout here. But it looked like professional and tech services was up pretty significantly, and dues and fees as well. I think there was one more that was kind of up pretty high.
Postage was up, but that's not really that's not a big line item.
Safety and
Service-
sanitation? was
Service
it?
to machines was another one too.
Okay, yeah, and safety and sanitation. So just curious what's driving that. The safety and sanitation shortfall seems pretty significant, actually.
Well, that one I ask almost every single month, and Linda always says it has to do with the encumbrances. So I don't know if you want to back that one up on the upkeep of buildings and grounds. It's usually the one I ask, but this one I refrained. The other ones I have the same questions.
Okay.
So, Linda?
All right, so I will apologize in advance for my voice, and if I break into a coughing fit while I'm talking, I will try not to, but I'll do my best to get through this. Professional and technical services is, there's charges in there for a grant that will be reimbursed by a grant. It's for a recruitment video. There's several small videos on why people should come work for Guilford. And so we had to pay the bills, and we're waiting for reimbursement to come in for those.
Okay.
The dues and fees, excuse me, is the IB testing fees that will be reimbursed by the students before the end of the year. Safety, sanitation, upkeep of building and grounds is mainly the encumbrances. I've given Cliff Burnham till the end of this month to go through his encumbrances and start getting rid of some of the ones that he feels like he's not going to need, so that one will try and come down hopefully for the April report, which you will see in May. And definitely, hopefully, by the end of the year, it will be back in line and within reason. Services to machines has been a couple different, and I don't have the specifics with me, for repair we've had to do, and some repair parts that we buy for some of the machines that guys repair ourselves. I can get you more detail on what the specifics on why that is. It just has been a very unusual year with having to get a lot of things repaired. Is that everything did I miss anything there?
You did, you covered everything.
Linda, on the next questions, just give us the hand signal for timing and the other one for encumbrances.
I can try to jump in and save her.
Yeah, why don't we see if Katie can fill in? We don't want you to have too bad a coughing fit. Sorry you're not feeling well. There were a couple on supplies and materials that I had that are actually running lower than usual, and that was athletic and custodial. Just wondering if that's timing or if there's going to be a catch-up on that. Katie, do you have a sense on that?
I think that's mostly timing, but Linda can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Okay.
So the athletic budget was increased this year for some of the rebranding. And we ended up doing a lot of that stuff with funds that were available at the end of last year. So we haven't used, we got a lot of rebranding done already.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, what was the other one?
Custodial.
Custodial. They're doing a changeover of some of the chemicals that they're using. So they are using up what we have of the old chemicals. But they just saw a number of orders go in for some of the other supplies that they use. They only do them, they only try and order them like quarterly or every few months and not order them every time somebody needs something. So they will be spent in the next coming months.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else on the financials?
I know I've asked this before, but substitute teaching continues to run a little higher than in the past 2 years. Is that the continued impact of COVID?
Yes, I think we're finding the need for that kind of coverage more than we have in prior years. We're continuing to watch that.
Thank you.
I'm going to, while everyone's thinking of other questions, I'm going to jump to the bottom to the workshop. It's more of a curiosity than anything. The workshop was held on March 28th, and I noticed there were a lot of different roundtable discussions that were held.
Yeah.
There were 16 teachers in attendance. I'm just wondering, is that a fairly normal turnout, or is that a greater than usual? I'm just kind of curious, is 16 something that you expected as a board for a workshop like that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's usually a good-sized group because what we're aiming for and typically get our teachers from all 7 schools, across all grades, across disciplines, so not only classroom teachers, but special ed, art, music, etc., world languages. So we try to really get a good representation of teaching staff really across the district and again across grades and disciplines.
Great, okay.
I think
go ahead.
the Board of Education, it's a meeting we do every year. It's been certainly impacted, unfortunately, the last couple of years by the pandemic. So I don't think we've held it in a couple of years. I know it was in 2020, the first meeting, end of March, that got canceled as we were all trying to understand what was happening with the pandemic. But it is a meeting that we hold every year. Again, without the administrators, just a chance for the Board of Ed to talk with the teaching staff.
Okay. Anybody else?
I know it's the most volatile, or one of the most volatile lines, but I was encouraged to hear that the tuition line remains on target to be under budget. Anything on the horizon that would cause you to change that perspective, or no?
I think we're in good shape. As you can imagine, Linda, Jason Scanziano, our Pupil Services Director, are watching it very closely. We could have a couple of changes, but at the moment, nothing on the horizon looks like it's going to create a problem that would make us over budget.
Great.
On the March 14th operations minutes, I did notice that on under the transportation update, and I completely understand that there's probably not a lot of detail that should be shared, but there were some situations with some stolen equipment at the bus yard, and I know this was from March 14th. Just wondering if there's been any positive movement on that, not detail, but on the security there, if there's been any changes or corrections there.
I'm not going to be as good at specifics, I think, as Linda has. Certainly the bus yard has been trying to address that, and I believe was working to increase security in that area.
Yes, I believe that we did do some things there to increase the security on the grounds and around the buses.
Yeah, I'm sure there was. I just wanted to confirm that. That's all.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Great. Anything else for Linda or Dr. Balistraci? That would include warrants, any of the minutes, or the financials. Okay. Then I will entertain a motion to accept the report of expenditures to the Board of Education for March 2022 in the amount of $4,771,057.61.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, recusals. Great. Katie, thank you. Linda,
Get well soon.
get well
Get well.
soon. Yeah.
No problem.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
no more talking. We will not ask you any more questions. You're off the hook now. Item number 5. You're not on. You're on now. Yeah, you're on camera. You're good right where you are. So item number 5.
Isn't technology wonderful sometimes?
Pick it up. Review and
service, Matt.
I'm all set up.
You're good. Yeah.
all right. Shall we review and approve the report of expenditures for town government for? There it is again. Sorry, March 2022. Mary Jane.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to start with revenues. I will also note that we are comparing the current year to 2021 and 1920 since COVID kind of changed our numbers last year. It gives you an idea of where we are over the 3 years. So at the end of March, we have brought in 99.6% of our revenues, which is higher than both of the other 2 years that we're comparing it to. A couple items I'd like to draw your attention to. Towards the top, the town clerk has brought in 103% of her budget, and I'd like to note that because I'm going to refer back to that when we talk about expenditures. That's mainly conveyance fees for housing purchases. And also tax collection. We are at 100.6% this year. $640,000 over our budget. I'd just like to note that we do have $161,000 left to collect on our current year levy, but we are $390,000 over on what we anticipated receiving from prior years. So we've done a great job of bringing in that prior year revenue. Most of the other line items we've talked about at other times. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions.
Is the park and rec still down because people just haven't returned to meet in person and?
Yes, as was noted by members of the board.
Sorry, I'm laughing. We were talking about this when we walked in.
Yeah, no one's around
There
here.
were parking spots when we drove in.
Yeah.
Like I said, as noted by members of your board as we walked in for this meeting,
Okay.
we were all able to find parking spaces. So to answer your question, yes, that is still a concern. And the budget for next year has been adjusted because the majority of those that we're paying for rental are not coming back.
One of the more significant tenants they had was the Vineyard Church, which rented on Sunday morning. I believe they had it for 2 or 3 hours every Sunday morning. They are no longer renting the COVID. They have decimated their flock, if you would. So they are no longer here, which is that they were a substantial tenant.
How about the police, a little less construction and some of the things that?
Correct, that's really, it's all
Yeah.
special duty, so that's exactly what it is.
Okay.
It is cyclical depending on what construction is going on.
And you may recall over the last couple of years, the state was, the water company was doing the construction on Boston Street and 146. So that resulted in this police activity.
And we budget that on a 3-year rolling average, so, it's hard to predict what.
Although
what's
we
gonna be done.
probably will see some more of that activity. They intend to pave this spring, basically from the West River all the way up to Route 1 by the old tower. So they finally are going to pave that all over again. So we'll see some increase there.
Okay. I remember they did a pretty good job with that. They kept us moving.
Yeah, they did.
When they were working at Water and River Street, though, that was a rough couple of days.
Yeah. It was also a little more difficult when they were going through the center of town. There were some shopkeepers who weren't too happy.
True.
Not that Amy was one of those shopkeepers.
Youth and Family Services continues to generate a fair amount of revenue.
That's a bad story.
No, I know.
Yes, the revenue's fine. We're almost 25% above their annual bogey with 25% of the year left. That's largely because Lynn Landry's numbers are they're currently at a caseload of 106 a couple of weeks ago, and they normally are in the mid-50s. So good news is revenue's high, but bad news is there are children in our community suffering.
And are they still able to take everyone? They're not turning anybody away?
They are still not able to cover everybody, although there's one of the administrators in the office who's now going to start taking a case. She is certified. She will start
So
taking
they're
a case.
figuring it out, yeah, okay.
That also balances out on the expenses a little bit, not by the same amount, but the expenses that line item is up too.
There's a different story about expenses.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
doesn't-
okay. Well, we'll go over that next.
We have made some investments in family services, largely with your support. With ARPA funds, as you may recall, we brought in additional staff members and are paying for those for a couple of years through the ARPA funds. And the expectation is that if we get past this curve, that we'll reevaluate the need for continuing to keep those additional resources on board.
Well, it's clear that there's a need within the community.
Right now, there's a need. Jeff, you couldn't say any better. Right now, there's a need. So.
Anything else on revenue? Expenditures?
Okay. On the expenditure side, at the end of March, we are at 75.4%, which is slightly higher than the previous 2 years. 74.8 and 73.5. A couple things at the top again. The town clerk's office is slightly higher than where she normally would be at this time. And here is where we're seeing the expense of the recordings due to the number of conveyance fees that are coming in. So we get the revenue, which will be offsetting this expenditure. Another line item is information systems, which is currently at 95.4%. We do have some new software that we have implemented over the past year and into this year for transparency, for reporting, a lot of new software. We did some polling. We have the new software that we did our budgeting for. Was not in the budget. So those items are here, but will be covered from other funding that we have in fund balance. So although it's obvious that that line item will go over, we do have funding to cover that. Youth and Family Services is the next one I was going to talk about that. Matt talked a little bit about ARPA funds. We also have other grants that they have on a regular basis that are not transferred into this line item until the end of the year once we know what those are. So again, that line item should not be over at the end of the year once we're through with that. So we have encumbrances that are putting our capital over, and I have mentioned in the past that we do have funding for some of our capital items, again, that will come in at the end of the year. And other than that, I would take additional questions.
Anyone? Questions?
One quick one. For the information systems, aside from the software, is there a training component that comes with that for staff, or is that?
It depends what software we have. For instance, the budgeting software, our staff picked up immediately. There was very little training for that. We have some other software. The biggest software going in is in the capital, is the EnerGov, which is at Town Hall South. That's the expenses in the capital line item. Huge amount of training for that. So we do, if we purchase software that is going to require training, it's all included in the contract that we sign.
Thank you.
Anything further? Yes. I think the next item is special fund weekly warrants.
I had one question on that, a few line items down the reval. The services prior year encumbrances of 32,000. Just curious, I know that there's a certain amount that we pay into that for reval. How many, I know it's going to be coming up. How many more payments do we have on that, or is that the last payment for reval services?
Well,
before it starts?
We had a $315,000 purchase order, I believe, for the reval that we're going through. So this is, and
How often are we paying?
we pay them at different intervals throughout the process. It's
Okay.
not monthly, it's not quarterly, it's
Okay.
as they reach specific milestones throughout the contract. I don't know off the top of my head how much is left. If you'd like to know, I can get that information to you.
I'm pretty much just asking to find out how much is left before they start the process, but, generally, are we 2/3 through paying them,
Again, I'll have to pull that
Yeah,
information
okay.
up. I don't have that.
I have a question on the special warrants.
Go ahead.
When I see retiree medical, that's OPEB cost, right? Or am I mistaken about that? I thought it might be.
Where about?
I want to make sure I'm
Oh.
answering your question correctly. Where are you seeing
About
that on
2/3 of the way
special
down.
fund?
Yeah, on the special warrants, probably about 2/3 of the way down.
What's the amount?
Couple items for
In the
retiree
35,
medical.
3,500?
The retiree medical. So that's money that it flows through from our retirees. So the money comes in from the retirees and then it goes out into the medical fund. So it's a flow through. So it's money that the retirees are contributing towards their retirement.
Oh, okay.
So it's not a true expense of the town. It's money that comes into us and it goes into the medical fund.
Okay, so those are premiums that they pay.
Correct, that's their
Okay,
portion.
I follow you.
Yep,
There's another side of that, right? There's the portion that we would pay, right?
correct.
Okay.
Yep, and it's all part of the entire medical fund calculation.
Yeah.
Anything else on special fund? Special, go
I
ahead.
just had a question on the splash pad. We know that that's funded by donations, so forth. I think anyway, these are the first time I'm seeing expenses come through. Is that correct so far?
On the splash pad itself, yes,
Yeah.
we've made 2 payments.
Yeah, okay.
Considerable amount, probably about $160,000. You've seen the work down there, they, have been doing
It's getting there.
doing some work. Yeah, it's good. Yeah. It should be done, they're hoping it'll be ready for Memorial Day, so,
Yeah. I just meant that this was the first time in seeing expenses for it listed on the report, so I was curious.
yep, once they got going, they really,
Yeah, they're not wasting any time. no.
correct,
Yeah.
yep. I sat in the parking lot and had my lunch there the other day just to go down and see it.
Move on to warrants. Any of the warrants? I did not have anything. Then we have, after that, capital fund. We have the school capital projects in the town. It appears that the school capital projects have been, as we were told, going to be cleaned up a lot.
Correct, so all the ones that we closed out are no longer on this report. As we move forward and as quickly as I can, we'll be closing out projects on both sides.
Can you, I probably ask this question every other time that these capital reports are cleaned up and, released to us. There are bonded projects here that the available balance and the fund balance are the same numbers. So for an example, if I'm looking at the school health and safety improvements from 13-14, actually that was the wrong one. The Adams Middle School improvements. That was from 14-15, 2.3, and if you look, the available balance is about 65,000 and the fund balance is 65, but there's also others as you go down, it goes for the town too, when they're not the same. Is that because of expected reimbursement on those, whether it's grant money or when would that not be equal, the available balance and the fund balance in the fund?
Exactly right. We could have additional expenses that are more than the revenue that we've gotten in, or we could have had slightly more revenue that's come in than our expenses. If we received a grant and had already brought some money in from bonding, then we make those adjustments in the following year. So they don't always, they're not always going to match.
I know that they don't always match. I was just wondering what the reasoning was, and it's basically a revenue factor.
Correct.
In now. Okay. So we have the school capital projects, and then anything on the town side. I didn't see anything that caught my attention either, but always good to have for record, of course, be able to look back on, see where we are. Medical?
So on the medical fund, I'm going to draw your attention to the very bottom of the page here, where our projected deficit at this time is $40,230. Our admin costs are running a little higher than we had expected at this point, so I am going to have a conversation with our consultants to see where that stands. So our revenues are kind of where they're supposed to be. It's our expenses that are a little bit higher, but it's the first time in a very long time that we've seen an estimated deficit. Obviously, $40,000 is easy enough for this fund to absorb, and that's exactly why we keep money in this fund. But that's where we're standing as of today. On the catastrophic claims side, we now have 19 claims that have reached the $75,000 threshold, which is where we start to track and watch them. And we are up to 5 that have gone over $150,000, and we're about 26% on the catastrophic claims.
Anybody have any questions on that? Pretty straightforward at this point. Okay.
Just one question.
John.
Did we change the ISL this
We did not.
period we're going into?
No. You mean the thresholds?
Yeah.
No, we did not.
Okay.
I have a question. Is the deductible year the calendar year, or is it the following
It's the fiscal year.
fiscal year? Okay.
So the HSA deductible, yes, from July 1 through June 30.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Anything else for Mary Jane? Anything on town?
Just one comment. As
Yes.
you guys all suffered through the presentations from our insurance consultant, but we predicted this was going to happen after several years of surpluses. He predicted even this cycle, based on the trends and the historical, the data that was coming through the system, and we were going to start to see this, which is what resulted in the significant increase in our healthcare costs for the 2022 and 23 year budget. So this, it didn't look like we were going to see this back in with November, December data, but the data that's come in since then, or the claims that have come in since then, obviously are bearing out to be consistent with his forecast.
Okay. Absolutely right. Okay. If nothing further, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to approve the report of expenditures of the town government for March 2022 in the amount of $2,327,727.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Recusals? Okay. Item number 6, discuss and take possible action on a request to use funds from the medical account to cover the cost of the Slim Nation Wellness Program for town employees. There is a memo that almost everyone received on their board back. Do you have it now?
You may have to read it out. to me.
Well, don't worry, we'll catch you up if you
I
didn't.
think it is.
Mary Jane, I know this is a memo to us from you, from Mitch Goldblatt, our Human Resources Director, and Linda Trudeau, Business Manager, from April 12th. This is regarding Rob Nevin's Slim Nation program. I highlighted
You can talk about it, you don't have to read the
I highlighted
memo.
a number of things to paraphrase it, but you probably
Go right
would.
ahead. If you want to paraphrase, go right ahead.
Well, however you want to do this, because
So, let us do it.
Why don't you go ahead and then we'll fill in the gap.
Right, so I just want to say that this is a joint effort that has come from the town through the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed through the Board of Education. Both sides have worked on this particular project. I'm going to let Mitch, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we do. Mitch is the driving force behind this, and Linda and I kind of just brought up his coattails and worked with our individual committees. So Mitch, if you'd like to give an overview of what we're asking for.
Sure. Thanks, Mary Jane. I think that the letter that's been penned by Mary Jane, basically from all of us, pretty much speaks for itself. But, basically, Rob Nevin's Slim Nation approached us through the police chief because the police chief came to me and wanted to do this program for police officers. He had heard of some resounding success with Clinton, especially the Clinton police chief. And so we had a meeting. Butch Hyatt, myself, Rob Nevin, without Rob Nevin, the first time, and the chief, and we spoke about this, and the chief from Clinton he himself partook in this, lost a lot of weight, feels healthier, he's cut down on medications. The chief wants to go forward with this with his employees, and I said, you know what, let's see if we can do this for everybody. Why just keep it just for the police? So, well, I'll cut to the chase. We met with everybody, including Rob Nevins. We put together this program idea, talked about utilizing the wellness funds that we've built up, and also expand it to as many people as possible, that being restrained by both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education at this point to about 20 individuals. We negotiated the price much lower than his standard price. And this has been something that's gone on with Marion, with Madison, with Milford, the 3 M's I call them, and Clinton. And everyone I've spoken to says it's been a resounding success and people are really excited about it. And you know, at a time when we all want to keep our employees healthy for all the obvious reasons, and also, you know, we're in a situation just like a lot of employers throughout this nation, where people are moving on, they're leaving jobs, and you know, we've had that experience as well. And if we can, since we're not going to be raising salaries so much, we can find other ways, other benefits that aren't that costly that we can go forward. I think this is a wonderful way to extend one of those benefits to our employees and show that we care about them, and there's more to you know, their job than the normal benefits and the salary they receive. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Mary Jane and Linda, I see, as well as Katie, are all on the call as well. I think between the 4 of us and Matt, we can answer your questions.
I would just like to add that we did have significant meetings with our medical consultants who did recommend that this type of program is a perfect use of the money in our medical fund. It was their recommendation that that's how we would come forward to you today for this. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that the consultants were driving that this is how we were going to. And I just want to, Mitch said 20 employees. I just want to make it clear it's 20 employees on the town side and plus 20 employees on the Board of Ed side. Katie and Matt can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe both boards were willing to have us go back to them if this is a rounding success. And our employees, you know, we have more than 20 employees that are looking to do this, that we would maybe come back and do another round after this. One of the things you might ask is, how come the employees aren't paying a portion of it? That was my first question, so you should have asked that too. In the end, we chose not to do that. That we didn't want to hinder that employee who could really benefit from this plan because they couldn't afford to pay 10%, 20%, 25%, whatever we would do. We have an agreement, and Mitch can maybe back me up on it. We have an agreement with Rob Nevins. If somebody joins the program at the beginning and 2 or 3 weeks in clearly isn't going to continue, he's not going to bill us for that person. So that was kind of the offset we made for that. So we're not paying for 20 people to do something that they don't finish. The intent is that they would need to finish it and at least, you know, put in the effort. So you know, those were the real big issues that I had from my standpoint. So I just wanted to address them with you.
Thank you, Mary Jane, for that information. And also, let me just back up what Mary Jane said. What she said is all correct. I'm sorry, I missed some of that. And also, Rob Nevins and I have had several discussions about this, as well as I've had discussions with other HR directors. The dropout rate it's non-existent, and if there's one, it's a lot. And if we end up with more than one, I'd be surprised, because it's something people really commit to, and he will meet one-on-one with people to make sure they stay with it. And if it does happen that people drop, then we just won't be charged, or maybe the next person in line will be able to pick it up if there is a waiting list, and then we'll see.
If there is,
Sorry, this is Katie Bastrese. I just wanted to kind of endorse what Mary Jane said. I think the Board of Ed chose 20 to start, just to see how our employees might respond. But if we find a much greater kind of desire for this than the 20 spots we've identified, we certainly are willing to think about doing this again after the 6-month time period. We just aren't equipped to do a great job of estimating the interest rate now, but certainly think it's a great idea.
If there is high demand, is it going to be a lottery to choose people or some sort of health criteria? Or?
I would say first come, first served, so.
Yep, I will
We hope
probably,
that would fill the spots.
Yeah,
The
that-
goal is to
Right.
fill the
That-
spots.
yeah.
if this gets approved by the Board of Finance, we will probably go forward in the next week or so with an email out to all our full-time employees to start. If it doesn't fill up the full-time, we can move to part-time, but I think we'll fill up the full-time. I know there's some interest in the police department itself. I've heard from a couple of officers saying, are we doing this? When are we doing this? When can I sign up? So I think there's definitely some interest there, and we'll see. It's an experiment, as Katie just said. We really don't know. The other towns I've spoken to, had a smaller turnout, and then when people saw the results from some of their colleagues, they said, "How do I get into this?" And they did it the next time around, and it's something that's supposed to be, hopefully something people stick with after they've gone through the initial, several months with Rob, and hopefully we go forward with it.
It's really a win-win. It's a great investment in our employees, and if they're healthier and feeling better, that's a win for them. And it's a win for the medical account if it helps, with some medical condition that may be there. We've all had friends that lost. We've all had friends that lost weight and then they're no longer on high blood pressure medicine or something like, you know what I mean? So it's a win-win for both sides.
I wanted to ask about that. Is there some experience with the program from other municipalities,
Yeah.
organizations
Yeah,
where
right.
it's lowering
Yeah.
health insurance costs?
Lowering health.
Well, Jonathan, I can't speak exactly to that, but I can tell you that if we could have paraded in. He'd be willing to come. The police chief, DeMayo from Clinton. He will get on the rooftop about this. How much weight he lost and how his blood pressure went down, his cholesterol went down. And as did other officers that they did it when they did it at Clinton. He's thrilled with it. And you know what? If we have a healthy employees, and it's good all around. It also means our absenteeism should be lower. We hopefully will see some results from this, and all around. I think Mary Jane's right. It's a win-win.
So one more clarification. The ask for this appropriation is pretty much for experimental one cycle of the program. It's not a commitment to permanent,
Right, we would.
permanently add it.
22,000 for
We would
40
have to
people.
go back I would have to go to the Board of Selectmen, Linda would have to go back to the Board of Education,
And they have to
and
come.
collectively, like we are all here today,
Come
we
back to
would
us.
come back to you. It is a commitment for 40 people at this point.
Now, is there a guarantee to lose at least 20 pounds? Maybe let's sign up for this thing.
Sign it up.
Maybe.
It's always 10
You could
pounds in
always-
the first week.
could
Do you
lose a
ever
few
hear that,
pounds.
right?
Guys, lose it faster.
It makes perfect sense to me. It's a great benefit. It makes employees more happier, healthier, more effective. One night at Yale is, if somebody gets sent in with a chest complaint for one night, more than pays for this. And in fact, I'd go so far as to suggest that maybe we send the most elderly member of the Board of Finance into this program as an emissary.
Thank you for volunteering.
Test case?
You
Just
making an
case.
assumption?
Oh, it's no.
But it does look like on his testimony, he has Middletown Fire Department, like he has some other municipalities that have done
Oh,
it
for
as
sure,
well.
yeah. Like Mitch said, Mitch spoke to many of the municipalities that use them. And I'll also like to add that when we went to the Board of Selectmen said, "This is a great program. Who else did you look at?" And we hadn't, but we did. Mitch went back and reviewed some other programs specifically, even in Guilford. We looked at those programs, and after doing that research, we came back to this one. So that was another, right, Mitch?
Exactly, Mary Jane. We did look for a couple others to come up with proposals. They weren't the same, and it just wasn't the same type of program that we're looking at here, although we did have a long discussion with at least one or two. Went back to the Board of Selectmen, discussed it further. It also helped us get the price down a little bit more, so that helped too. And here we are.
Can't really say much more than what's already been said about it, except that I don't know if he came up at all, but it appears that Chief Hyatt was the one who brought it, so I just want to make sure.
Correct, that's what Mitch
Chief,
said,
I
yes.
I'm sorry that wasn't clear.
I want to make sure he gets a little bit of credit for this. I know there's a lot of people that got involved in this, but I see Chief Hyatt brought it to the attention, so thank you to Chief.
Absolutely. It started through the Chiefs Association.
Right.
And when Butch spoke to, like I say, Chief DeMayo of Clinton, that's when Chief Hyatt brought it to my attention, and we talked about it a little bit. And he was trying to find a way to put it in his budget, and I said, we talked about it some more. I said, why don't we, if this is that good, we should make it available to all the employees. And that's when, unfortunately, if I just let him go and he found a way to put it in his budget, he would have done this 6 months ago. So it's taken us a while to get this far, but we think we're better off by offering it to all the employees, both the board side and the town side. Like I say, there'll be people who will not take advantage of this, but will see that the town of Guilford is interested in their health and well-being in another way than we already are. And I think that also has some real benefit to us also.
Now, Mitch, did you say we'll derive about $1 million in savings? I could have sworn I...
To give any kind of promise such as that. I hope you're right.
I'd like to move that we use $22,000 from the medical account to cover the cost of the Sanitation Wellness Program for both the Board of Education and town employees, as presented tonight.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Thank you.
Great. Good
Thank
luck.
you.
Go get healthy.
And the before and after photos.
I
The
wanna
biggest
see tape
loser
measure.
should get a prize at the show.
I might join. The COVID 40.
Yeah, no kidding, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mitch, and everyone else involved in this effort. Appreciate it. Item number 7, consider to take appropriate action on the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. In case, and I'll admit it wasn't clear to me either when the agenda was being created, as I look at Tracy, I was like, we got to decide the mill rate within 10 days. And I was like, yeah, it's on your agenda, because I always take a look at the draft. I was like, oh, that appropriate action on the budget, that's the mill rate. And a couple of you asked me the same questions. Don't we have to approve the mill rate? Item number 7. So first of all, I do want to thank, again, the board and everyone involved in the process. As we know, on April 12th, on last Tuesday, the budget passed. Want to thank everybody who came out to vote on the budget, not necessarily for or against, but came out and voted. So just very quickly, our current mill rate is 32.62, and based on the Guilford voters passing the fiscal year 2022-23 budget at referendum, we would be looking to set the mill rate at 33.25, which would be a 1.94% increase. At this point, we could certainly have discussion on it, or I could just go ahead and entertain a motion to approve setting the mill rate at that. We've had lots of discussion about the budget. Don't know if we need to have any more. The voters have spoken.
So moved.
So I'll entertain a motion to approve setting the mill rate at 33.25.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Further? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Beautiful. Thank you again, everybody. Committee reports, number 8, building permits. From April 18th, anything in building permits? Probably not. Item number 9, oh, I have a note here that I was supposed to do something. Under old business, item number 9, I wanted to just remind everybody on the board of the date of the town facility tour, and I had a little note, look up the date. And so the date is, I think, the Monday after our next regular meeting. I think, could someone go ahead and,
Is that May 23rd?
is it May 23rd?
Yeah,
Don't-
that's when I have
I
facilities.
don't even
tour.
have it in my calendar, so I'm glad I
Yeah.
didn't look it up. All right,
Yeah.
it was, yeah, the 16th was a bit of an issue for some of us.
In
Yeah.
on vacation.
Right,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we'll discuss it. We'll discuss it again at our regular meeting on the 16th, just a reminder for the following week. But May 23rd, did we, and again, on the time, did we say early, a little early?
Some-
Try to do it earlier.
A number of
Bob,
them-
do you want to?
Well, Public Works, is it 3:30 they close or 4? 3:30.
3:30.
3:30.
Well, the
So,
building's open because the
yeah,
maintenance guys.
it's good to see people around, ask
Yeah.
questions. When I was involved with this, the first time we did it was Facilities Task Force. We went in a morning and took a great long time to do this. It was rather probably more involved than what we will be able to do, or will do, although I'm in favor of taking as much time as we can because it's how often we get to do this. But just to drive around and see closed facilities of people not at work is like getting in your car and going around. Even with Steve Nydorf giving you some commentary, it is better to step out of the bus and look around and ask some questions and find out just how things work, so we knit together better decisions. It's just sort of the nuts and bolts of it. We deal with numbers, and it makes so much more sense if we can actually see who does what, why, how, and when. So, if people can get a half day off work or devote the time, I highly recommend it. I know it's difficult, I know it's a work day, but if we can, and Nydorf called me right away when he saw the email I wrote and said, yes, please, earlier the better. I'll leave it to others to set the timing according to their abilities.
So like after lunch or?
Yeah, after lunch, we started in the basement of Town Hall, which is fascinating. And it's all about, storage and what does and doesn't happen and why and what could be done and where and how. It's all about what we have to work with and suggestions about how we can evaluate the suggestions that are made to do with it. And then the next nearest thing is Public Works, and then the rest, decide. It's a
How much
little-
time did you devote last time?
Oh, it must have been 4 hours, because we did get out and walk around and ask stupid questions and,
So like 12.
How long has this been here?
3:30?
Since 1981, 1982. When was it declared a floodplain? 1981, that kind of thing.
If it's the board's pleasure, we could pick a time of 1 o'clock and make it a half day, and if everybody's okay with that, get in the calendars, and as long as everyone's good with that.
Marvelous.
Is anybody open to going even longer?
To go on even longer?
Yeah, go on even a longer excursion.
We,
Sometimes my company actually needs me, and I'm glad. So
Well-
I gotta ask them, but
well, I mean,
if
if it
you're
goes.
interested to go to all the.
Yeah, if it go, you mean if it goes past 5, or?
No, I just mean if we start a little earlier, we could spend more time going
Like
around to
12.
the different
12 or 12:30.
facilities and so forth.
Hey,
But I know it's hard to get the time off. I know it's difficult for me
I
sometimes
was
too.
just thinking if people wanted.
Sandwiches for the bus ride. There you go.
All right,
Oh, I think we're in for
I'll
12.
take you on that.
Hey, if we do 10, do we get breakfast too?
I want to see this HVAC. We didn't see HVAC. I'm dying to see the HVAC.
So 12 to 4, should we plan for?
We could, yeah.
I mean,
12 to-
if it's,
No.
if anybody's open to
If
it.
I'm getting sandwiches on a bus, I'll get, no. Just kidding.
Sandwich on the bus does sound.
No, we're,
Just,
we're committing to it now. So 12 o'clock on the 23rd, we'll start the tour. And we'll take the afternoon.
I think,
I think it'd be time well spent.
I think it's a day off for
Yeah.
me. Once I start, I don't get out, so.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna
Just
do
really
work from home.
quickly, I'm gonna look at Matt on this one. It's a kind of a Robert's Rules thing that I want to just make sure. As long as we're all gonna be together for this,
We'll post it, you'll post it as a meeting.
so we're gonna have to
It'll be
post it
workshop.
as a meeting,
Workshop.
right?
It'll be a
Okay.
workshop.
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure we don't do anything that's,
You can't take any actions.
Yeah.
no, just, it's just simply a tour, okay? Great, thank you.
Good
Thank you.
question.
Do we take minutes? Does Tracy go?
There's a sandwich on the bus, Tracy.
The agenda will be facility tour, and there'll be no action, you know,
They went on a tour.
went on a
and
tour.
adjourned.
A 4-hour tour.
A 4-hour.
Oh, that's it, we just completely aged ourselves.
On that note, is there any new
Is
business?
there any, right?
I had something I wanted to bring up that,
Sure.
the majority of the feedback that I got from the public on the budget was that it was not publicized. And I know that it was, but, didn't know who decides how it's publicized.
What can we do differently?
Well, the only thing the suggestion that came up was using the mass notification.
We
for
did
it.
that years ago, and the feedback we got was horrible. People were angry. It's a no-win situation, in my opinion. Whatever you do.
The big thing on the town green was on.
Yeah,
to
the
vote.
suggestion I saw was to move that around specifically up into North Guilford, so people there might have seen it for a day or something.
Ironically, that was a topic of conversation at this morning's Board of Selectmen meeting as well, in terms of utilizing the mass notification system. I think we've already taken, at least I know I've already taken some liberties with that system, which was originally used just for emergencies.
Right.
I have crafted messages that talk about deadlines for senior tax freeze applications, et cetera. So I think we're gonna take a look. We're gonna talk to the attorneys. We're gonna talk to the provider of the service. We're gonna talk to the state about using it for a variety of purposes other than emergencies. But to your point, there are some people who have complained that this is being used in the fashion that it's currently being used, which is once a week, because it's not really emergency, but they want to know when an emergency is. So, but on the other hand, we have almost 10,000 touch points between emails, cell phones, and text. So we get a pretty wide distribution in the community, and I'm committed to taking a look to see how we can expand the use of it to keep people more informed and involved. Under new business, I was going to talk a little bit about the basketball courts. And there's a classic example of how information hasn't gotten out into the community in a timely fashion. Now, some of that has to do with our inside, what I call inside baseball thinking. We're talking about these things at budget hearings and so forth, et cetera. But we're not getting the message out beyond, what we think people are paying attention to, which is maybe a little bit gratuitous, because no one's, quite honestly, if there's nobody else in the public out here, right? Okay, so, but your point is very well taken. The other thing that I'm committed to exploring is to put together, I think a weekly newsletter would be a little bit cumbersome, but Tracy and I will be working on some kind of communications where we are at least highlighting and maybe posting on our website something, this is what I did, this is what we did over the last month, or these are the items that are topical right now. So we're committed to making some kind of effort to engage the community in a better fashion. And, I say that at the sake of one of my favorite lines, which is democracy is a participatory sport. You have a responsibility to try to pay attention. Now, but we need to give people more opportunities and venues to pay attention. So, but thank you for that question.
Yeah, thank you. And I do want to just say regarding the article that was in the paper about the courts, and you raised that, I do want to commend you and the Board of Selectmen, those in town that have decided to look at it again and get a task force together. There was a lot of uproar and uprising, but that communication obviously got back to the town leaders.
Absolutely.
And has changed that discussion to, all right, let's see if we can do something better that meets all sides. And that's what that communication's all about. So, thank you, to you and actually those that brought it to our attention.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise it could have just gone under the radar and then it would have been under construction and no one would have known. And that would have been 10 times worse. So that early communication really did make a difference, so. Yeah.
I have a new business item, which I think is maybe a new business item that's come up before, but it's about the budget material. And when I'm going over the budget material each annual cycle, I could see the need to send out like a PDF so you have like a static copy of the budget as it was presented and, at each point in the process. But I'm wondering too if I can just get an active spreadsheet, because I think that would just really help me do some analysis and to look at the budget in a lot of different ways. And it occurred to me that I probably just should have asked, but I'm wondering if next budget cycle.
Download the budgets right from ClearGov into
Oh,
an
really?
Excel spreadsheet.
I probably should have tried something like that, but do you think maybe it would just be
Yeah.
easier if you just plain old sent us, here it is, PDF, here it is as an Excel document?
Yeah, we can talk about that.
You can convert it too. You can
All right.
convert if you have it, if you have the again, you'd have to have the software, but you can convert it from PDF to Excel too.
I'm sure they have it in the spreadsheet over there.
Well, because ClearGov, Excel exports,
Yeah, you can export it any
yeah,
way
you
you
can
want.
export it as a PDF or
As
an
long as
Excel.
you have
so
the program on your desktop, you can export
I
it.
will send to the board the Excel copies.
Beautiful. Save us all that converting too.
Thank you.
I'm going to get you up on that ClearGov though. As we move forward. I know.
We have to work on it.
It's easy in concept, but not as easy in practicality. You really have to kind of play with it a lot to understand it, It's a great tool, don't get me wrong, but it's not as intuitive as you might think.
And it's a use it or lose it in terms of, so you look at it, for a couple of weeks, once a year. And you got to go back to refresher training the following year.
Right. Unless you're using it every week. Yeah.
We just had a meeting with ClearGov this morning. They have a personnel budgeting that I had Mitch and his staff look at so that we may or may not be doing it, but capturing all of our employees and all of the salaries, all within ClearGov as well. So that when if you look at fire department wages and you drop it down, you see every single position. So I mean, we still have to review whether or not we're going to do it, but it's just the next level of the programming.
I do appreciate though the amount of work and entry that goes into that too, though. Having a very potent system at my office and it's 20 people, I can only imagine what.
Well, that's why we had a meeting
750
today.
hour plus,
The meeting we had today was for the 2024 budget.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
we need to get a head
Yeah,
start
no.
if we do it,
Yeah, of course.
And there's significant benefits to our staff as well by utilizing the system. It's one data entry, all right, from each department head that rolls up, as opposed to people taking the input and then inputting it back.
Right, there's no human error. If there's a mistake, the department head put it in, it's no longer my mistake. But our department heads loved it, absolutely loved working with the
great.
program.
That's great.
So we'll see if we take that next step with personnel, but it would.
Okay.
I was going to just add, Mary Jane did give us that presentation today. It was very impressive. Whether we use ClearGov or something else, moving away from trying to do this manually on spreadsheets, we're beyond that these days, I think, and I think we need to move forward one way or the other. I think it will make, in the long run, our budgeting more accurate, and also there's some roll-ups that we can hopefully show that'll answer more of your questions quicker and in the budgeting process as well. So I think there's some positives there for sure.
Thank you. Anything else under new business?
Mr. Chairman.
That was a lively new business, and there's more, and there's more?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
The first of which is, let's go back to the subject about basketball courts. I think in the article indicated we would put together a task force. The task force at this point, hoping would consist of, I have Lou Federici has volunteered for the Board of Selectmen. I would respectfully request a member of your board participate in that. There will be a representation from the Police Commission, the Fire Commission, the Park and Rec Commission, as well as the respective department heads there, if we need to get to that point. We are currently exploring several options. The article, I think, was fair. One of those options is can we fit it? Going back and take a look, can we fit it on the public safety complex and still provide the appropriate amount of storage needed? Perhaps reducing potential for future growth, but if we can fit within the footprint and not eliminate those courts, that's an objective right now, is to determine whether we can do that. We're also looking at putting a second court at Adams. Board of Education, thank you, Dr. Balistraci and the administration have agreed that they would welcome another court on the Adams campus. Perk testing for the soils was being done last week. Those results should be available to us shortly. The engineers have figured out that you can actually fit it on the footprint, so that creates an opportunity if we have to take the courts from the police department. We're also committed and already working on the opportunities up at Bittner Park. We have a preliminary design. We can move the skate park from this way to this way and be able to fit in another basketball court. There's also significant demand for increased pickleball facilities, but more importantly, lights on that facility up there for the skate park, the existing basketball court, possibly a second, and pickleball. So we are working through a series of scenarios. It may well be that by the time we actually convene this task force, we may have an answer as to whether or not we can facilitate what we need to have in terms of storage and retain the basketball courts. So I respectfully ask if you would, one of your members would be willing to participate in the task force.
Mr. Hartman.
Ask a busy man, he'll get it done.
I'm just going into my slow season. It's good. Yeah, the facilities task force thing.
So I was going to say, you would think that, as the architect on the Board of Finance here, that it might be me, but yeah, I would rather have somebody who can focus on it. I don't think I could focus right now, so I appreciate you stepping up.
I have two other pieces of the business.
Please.
I'm sorry to forestall you getting home at a reasonable hour this evening.
And we're still before 9. So
the first of which is we had a request and presentation was actually led by Charlie Haverner this morning and Sarah Williams from the Guilford Land Conservation Trust. For those of you who are aware, the Olmsted Trust property, which is on it's at the end of Broad Street and River Street. It's that beautiful overlook of the West River. The wall is collapsed. Parts of the wall have collapsed into the West River. The Conservation Trust has been aware that they have some structural problems there. They have asked us to participate in remedy, solution, rebuild. At this point, we don't know what that's going to take, but the Board of Selectmen this morning made the commitment to them that, yes, this is an asset that we need to preserve and protect and potentially rebuild. So we're willing to participate in some level of funding. Land Conservation Trust, even though they typically raise money for land, not structures, is willing to do some fundraising. And the Board of Selectmen unanimously this morning determined that this would potentially be an application for American Rescue Plan funds. But we need to do some preliminary engineering work to determine the depth of the problem and the remedy. So the board has made a commitment to the Conservation Trust that we're going to participate in restoring and maintaining that. By the way, for those of you who don't know, the Land Trust owns the part where everybody goes and takes pictures at weddings and that kind of stuff. But we own the parking lot just to the right of it, which is also in need of some attention, potentially, particularly since there's no barrier that prevents people from driving their car right over the edge of it. So the Board of Selectmen recommended, and it's some point we'll be coming to you to talk about those funds. The last one I want to talk about is we also this morning approved the use of the originally designated ARPA funds for the splash pad for the Park and Rec to resolving the significant problems we have with the parking lot there. Anybody who's ever driven up there in the last several months knows that you might need a new axle by the time you get out of the parking lot. There have been significant drainage problems there. Public Works comes in, we fill it, we roll it, we fill it, and then a couple months later we're creating. So we're committed to up to the $180,000. I think we had committed for the splash pad originally for drainage. We don't anticipate needing anywhere near that, and there'll be a couple of other enhancements to the overall footprint. So I just wanted to bring you folks up to speed on where we were with those particular initiatives. And lastly, a moment of personal privilege. Bob just volunteered because he's just come through tax season, and I can't believe you're still awake.
It's not midnight yet.
Or you're not at your office getting one more in.
It's a delight to be here.
Well, I know we have two members that are going on.
Oh, that's true. That's right.
Very little sleep
Yep.
right now, so,
Fumes.
yeah. Congrats to making it here, so
Yeah.
maybe we can get out of here just before 9 o'clock. Anything else on new business? Any questions, comments?
Move we adjourn.
There it is. Oh, I'm sorry, hold on, before we do that. Public forum.
Second that.
Oh, yeah.
Public forum.
That's all right, I'm sorry.
I know that I don't believe there's any public forum that's necessary, but wanted to put it out there. Okay. What did you say before?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank